Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar, Technology for SMEs in a Hybrid Work Environment. My name is Annie Fitzgibbon. I'm Director of Member Services here in Cork Chamber. So welcome to all our Cork Chamber members and our IT at Cork members, our respective presidents, Paula Cogan of Cork Chamber and Gillian Bergen of IT at Cork. We're delighted to be here today with this on this partnered event with IT at Cork in association with Cork Chamber Skillnet and IT at Cork Skillnet. So Kevin will explain a little bit more about that, but I suppose we're delighted that everyone's here today. It is challenging at the moment. We're all trying to run essentially, I think, dual lives, virtual lives and in-person lives. So it's a particularly challenging time, and the title was never more appropriate. So thanks everyone for joining us. I know everyone's really, really busy on this short week as well. As I said, my name is Annie Fitzgibbon, Director of Member Services of Cork Chamber. So just very quick housekeeping. Again, probably the best group here across IT, you know all the rules. But again, if we could just make sure mics are kept off and that you should all be aware that we are recording this just to have. And you can use the chat box there. You'll see there's already some comments made there in the chat box if there are any questions that we picked up on later. And as well, you're well aware of this, I'm sure, at this stage, well used to Zoom, but the speaker view is probably the best view to watch this session over the next hour or so. So again, thanks so much to IT at Cork for joining with us on this. And Kevin O'Regan, Director and Owner of Radius Technologies and also Board Member of IT at Cork, is going to facilitate the session, and he'll introduce the speakers and give you a general overview of the session and our partnership. So thanks, Kevin. I'll hand over to you.
That's great. That's great. Thanks very much, Annie. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the IT for SME series of events, and it's a very exciting partnership between IT at Cork and Cork Chamber. The objective of the initiative is to just assist SME leaders to understand how technology can really benefit their business. We will be running a series of these events during the year, and the topic for today's event is how technology can assist in a hybrid working environment. So just before we kick off, I would like to ask Paula Cogan, Cork Chamber President, just to say a few words.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. Much appreciated. I suppose I'm one of those people who's in a hybrid working environment today. I generally don't work from home, so I've just run around the house and told my 3 kids in college to turn off everything, so hopefully that the Wi-Fi will hold up. It's fantastic to actually get this series underway. I think Gillian and I started talking about this about 15 months ago and felt it was a true partnership. So delighted to be here today. And actually on a personal note as well, as CEO of Cognitive Health, Adam, we are actually inputting as we speak this week, HR Locker. So I hope I get a good discount now for talking very credibly about it. And it's certainly helping us as an SME. We have 55 employees throughout Ireland, in Portugal and in the US as well. So certainly it's going to help our business, I think, as well. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you today as well, Adam. So great to see everybody, and in advance, happy St. Patrick's weekend. Hope we all get to enjoy it. Thank you.
That's great, Paula. Thanks very much for that. Now I'd like to ask Gillian Bergen, President of IT at Cork, just to say a few words, if you wouldn't mind, Gillian. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. And thank you, everybody. Delighted to see so many on the call today. On behalf of IT at Cork, I'd like to welcome you all to this session. And just to reiterate what Paula said there, we're delighted to have another opportunity for IT at Cork to partner with Cork Chamber and for our skillnets to collaborate. As we know, collaboration and connection is the way forward for everybody. So it's a better together model, and I hope we can continue to do that. Thanks to the team for creating this event today in support of SMEs. I hope we can build on it. I hope we can continue to do more to support our SMEs in the region. So looking forward to more collaborations there as we move forward. For anyone not familiar with IT at Cork, I'm going to do a shameless plug, but it's okay, I won't talk about it. I'm going to pop something, a little video in the chat window there for somebody to consume afterwards, if you would like to. And thrilled to see Adam from HR Locker, one of the speakers here today, and also Keith, who's one of our Maltese members. So really looking forward to their advice and counsel next. And just say to everybody, enjoy this session, have your questions ready, and I will hand you back now to Kevin. Thanks, folks.
That's great, Gillian. Thanks very much. And of course, I should mention our sponsors, the Skillnet for IT at Cork and Skillnet for Chamber as well, for sponsoring the series. So thanks very much for that. So moving on, just to introduce our two speakers. So we've got two speakers today, and the format of the event, we're just going to do a question and answer session. I'll talk to Adam Coleman, CEO and founder of HR Locker first, and then we'll also have a discussion with Keith Fitzpatrick, who's Director of Cybergate International. Adam is based in Lahinch, I believe, at the moment, and Keith is based in Malta. He is a member of the IT at Cork and one of our international members, so we're delighted to have Keith here today. So as I said, the format will be just some questions and answers, and then we will open up to the chat at the end of the session for all the members who are participating if they have any questions in the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Adam. And I was really delighted to meet Adam in the preparation for this event. Like he's a huge amount of experience in this area. And I think what's going to be really interesting about Adam's discussion is, he has a lot of experience in remote working and hybrid working. And I think his background and the products in his suite, they're very much around kind of, HR and people related issues. So he's a technologist, but he's got a focus on HR. So what I'd like to do is maybe, Adam, just before we get into the first series of questions, do you want to just give a couple of minutes on background on yourself, just so people understand the background you came from?
Sure, absolutely. I spent 6 years as a tech recruiter, both in Ireland and the UK. Then I joined a small little company called Eaststat Digiphone. I was the 5th employee there, and we grew that to, as people know, I think to 800 people within 3 years, and it was sold to BT for a lot of money. It became O2 Ireland. And then I went to O2 UK, and I headed up their commercial divisions up there. And to be honest with you, that was the first hybrid working environment I'd ever been in. And it was a bit nuts, right? Because I go on these calls on a Monday morning, and I kid you not, right? This is 2002, 3. I go on a call, and there'd be 150 people on a call. And honest to God, I was going, this is nuts. This just is crazy stuff. And I was on these calls every single week for over nearly 2 years. And my mind didn't change. It was still nuts, this whole way of working. Really bizarre. But I got introduced to it because a lot of the times I had to actually hire salespeople who were working all over the country. So they were mostly working from home and hybrid working at that stage. So that was my first introduction to it. My next introduction to it then was when I left O2 UK and I came back to Ireland, I set up a HR consulting company. And I based it in Lahinch. Christ, why did he go to Lahinch? For the same reason, I suppose, that I left Ireland in the first instance, because traffic was killing me. And I got an opportunity due to a family illness to move back to Ireland, and we based ourselves out of Lahinch, and I set up a HR consulting company. And trying to drive a company from a remote place like Lahinch is fairly hard. Like we did silly things like, we had a Dublin number, so people didn't know they were calling Lahinch because they were less likely to do business with you if you're in Lahinch rather than Dublin. But as time went on, we changed then from being a HR consulting company into being a IT product-based company with HR Locker. We started that transition around November, well, actually it was more earlier than that, but November 13 really. And by sort of 17, it wasn't making sense for us because we needed to hire developers and stuff like that. So we started to hire remote developers. I thought, Jesus, this stuff is actually working. You can work remotely and you can have hybrid. And we had half our staff were coming into our 600 square foot of offices, which were completely crammed in Lahinch, and some were working from home or whatever. So I started advocating about it in 2018. And if you don't believe me, you can Google Adam Coleman Disrupt HR, and you'll see me talking about why HR professions should champion remote working before COVID. Now, COVID has been tough for everybody, but it's been fabulous for our business because the lights started going on. So a lot of our time was spent educating people to look at remote and hybrid as options to increase talent, talent pools, all that sort of stuff. So when COVID hit, it was sort of feisted on us to a certain degree. So we were hybrid at that stage. But then we went, within 2 weeks, it was easy for us because we had all the systems in situ. We went immediately remote. And we're staying completely remote. And the main reason is that nobody wants to come back to the office. Although saying that, the people who are around Clare, basically there's 2 of them in here today who are using the space to collaborate and stuff. So we now have employees in Ireland, UK, Spain, Vietnam, and soon to be Portugal. And they're also splattered all the way around the country. With the cohort, I suppose, at the beginning in Lahinch. So that's our background really to remote working.
And you know, throughout that background and throughout your experiences, you know, have you formed an opinion about remote or more importantly hybrid? You know, like what would your opinion be of it, having kind of lived it in different formats for a number of years?
Let's talk hybrid, because that's what we're about here, right?
Yeah.
Today, I would say it's bloody difficult. I'd say it's fantastic for the employee, but it's really, really difficult to get it right from an employer's perspective. You know, and there's all the legislation coming out saying, oh, people can request it and do all that sort of stuff. Don't wait for the legislation, ask them, you know? So it is fraught. It's fraught with getting it right. And there's a couple of things that are really, really important. And you have to look at the job, first off. Yeah. Then you have to look at the people. Can the people work remotely? And then if you look at the people, if they can work remotely, where are they working? You know, and you look at the person, the place, and then you ask them to contract with their household of how they should behave around their working place, right? And then of course there's trust and truth, which is for a real good hybrid working to work, the company and the individual have to have a principle of trust and truth in situ. Because if that trust and truth doesn't happen, your hybrid working is going to fail.
Very good, very good. Yeah. So I suppose what you're saying there is that the challenges are around kind of the softer issues around the culture and around creating the right environment for that to mix, for that mix to work, and maybe also kind of our traditional concept of work has been a place and a period of time to being just, you know, an activity that, you know, that can be done pretty much at any time once requirements are met or you know, KPIs are met or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about it is that your KPIs are going to be the same whether they're remote or they're hybrid or whatever. And in my experience, when you get hybrid and remote working properly, your KPIs can increase because people have more time on their hands. And not only more time on their hands, but if you get the right grooves and you get the right habits in situ, when a person arrives to their PC or laptop or wherever their workstation is, or their mobile phone for that matter, they know they're plugged in. They know they're plugged in, and they have to attend certain meetings at certain times of the day, and they build their job and their work and their life to a degree, because it's about work-life blend. Because I've heard recently a couple of people have gone back hybrid who are always saying, oh, you know, I prefer hybrid, and then you talk to them now and they're saying, oh, I'm not so sure, because I have to have a workplace at home and I have to have a workplace somewhere else. And some people are struggling with that even, you know?
Yeah. So it's interesting what you said there, that, you know, that it's great for the employees, right? That the advantages stack up big time for the employees, and for the employers then, you know, that there's some challenges there. But once you get the challenges right, you know, can you see real advantages in hybrid? You know, are there things that if you get the basics right, are there real advantages for the employees and the employers in this kind of stuff?
There's massive advantages, but again, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Like for instance, we've hired 4 graduates since last September, right? And I don't know about the rest of you lads, but when I graduated from college and I wanted to be down Temple Bar on a Thursday night drinking with my work buddies or whatever the case may be, or down in Cork or wherever. So I was nervous about hiring graduates into that type of scenario. But I realized that, okay, not all graduates want to be down Temple Bar or down Patrick Street or wherever it happens to be drinking with their colleagues. There are people who would prefer to live remotely and whatever. So our whole graduate recruitment thing took a massive change. Was that, you know, how open are you? Why do you want to work remotely? And we got them to do all of this on video even before we met them. So we said, okay, you've got past the first thing, and then we sent them out a thing and said, right, now I want you to record 5 minutes on these 5 questions and send it back to us. Shows your workplace and shows your UCLA speeds as your speeds of where you're going to work from, and all that's done. And when you get through that process, then and you watch the videos, and you can see who's capable of doing it, who isn't. So that's why I keep saying hybrid, remote, all that sort of stuff. You look at the job, you look at the person, you look at the place. You look at how are they contracting with their people who live in the place where they're going to be working, and then the trust and truth of the employer. But again, Kevin, I think you're about to bring this up about the tools. The tools are very, very important, right?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're just going to talk about maybe some of the technology around this and the tools. Yeah. So that's great for that intro.
And one of the things that's good, and everybody out there who's employers and owners of companies, you probably have a lot of the tools already. And from our experience, you're better to build on the familiar than introducing new tools. Introducing new tools is like, oh my God, there's a new tool to learn. But if, like, for instance, if you take the likes of HR Locker, we integrate with Teams, Microsoft, all that sort of stuff. So people find it easy to take on the product because they're relating it to what they're doing already. And I think that's one of the really, really good tips to do, is to look at the IT that you have internally first and see, can you make that work? Whatever hybrid arrangements that you want to arrange with your staff. But the key thing is communication. So whether you're using Zoom, Teams, whatever, it doesn't really make any difference. Google Hangouts, you have to make it right for your business and for your employees. And like, at the end of the day, you know, what we're here to do is to make life easier for employers and employees, and then to allow the employees then to be able to manage their career within that business. Yeah,
and that's really interesting. And I think that, like, when we were doing our preparation for this series of events, one topic that has come up, and we may actually dedicate an event to it, is just ready available technology that is available for SME business owners to run their business and to I suppose improve the operation of their business that they already have and they may not be aware of it. Like I do think though that, like, what is key, and I think, you know, SME leaders do need to think about this, is when they're looking at their technology, maybe not so much the tools, but it's the platform that they use. So how is their technology delivered? I think that's really, really important. And like the historical way that we all did it when we were in the office was there was a room with servers and there was copper connecting each user to that server. And that's how business owners delivered their platforms. Now, you know, with this hybrid environment, I think that, you know, cloud computing for the SME sector, I think is something that we should seriously look at a lot more. Because what cloud computing does, and there's so many different types of it, we won't go into a lot of detail, but it gives the flexibility for the workforce to be productive no matter where they are. And it also gives the level of security that's needed. And we'll be talking to Keith about security in a while, but it gives the level of security. So I think, you know, it's not a new technology, but I think cloud computing in hybrid, I think, is something that we should well look at, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree, Kevin. Like, for instance, if you take HR Locker is built on the Microsoft Azure cloud.
Very good, yeah.
All the security stuff is there in situ. And again, with hybrid work, we've been using this for years as like hashtag work is no longer a place. And I'm actually going to start proving it on the 11th of April, where I'm actually going to, in a camper van, I'm going to go and visit every single one of our employees across Ireland, the UK, and Spain. Not going to make it to Vietnam, by the way, but maybe the closing end of the year at Vietnam. And to prove two things, really, that the three-day non-working weekend, I'm not allowed to call it, it's flexible working. I'm not allowed to call it a 4-day working week, because I'm out to prove a 3-day working weekend is more productive than a 5-day working week, as well as work is no longer a place. So you might be able to follow me on my travels, but we'll get back to that at some other time.
Very good, very good. That's really interesting, Adam. Thanks very much for that. Like, I suppose closing out then, you know, are there any kind of bullet points or tips you'd like to leave people with, you know, or a summary of kind of?
Yeah, the simple thing in regards to hybrid working, the simple thing is that, like, we use Microsoft Outlook, and Outlook is our window to our work. So therefore you have a situation where if I start on a Monday morning and I open up my Outlook and I have all these scheduled meetings, that's my office for all intents and purposes. So again, it's building on the familiar. The other important thing, the three things I would say, is that use the familiar that you already have and get people to start using it better, because you'll find a lot of them haven't used it in the past. The second thing really is to contract with your employees. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about employment contracts or anything like that, that how it will work. Communicate with them, ask for their feedback, how it will work. It may well work for some and not for others, and that's okay. And through that communication, come up with a hybrid policy, if you want to call it that, and embed it in your contracts or in your handbook or whatever you want to do it. But once you get that, make sure that everybody has habits and grooves during the day, if they are working remotely or hybrid, that they have to check in at various times, because it's good for them. And also put social ones in. We have at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I think it's at 3 o'clock in the day, we have what we call water cooler time, where people just drop into their Microsoft water cooler meeting and they chat away with people who are in the company and whatever. But it does put an onus on an employee and an employer as well to start looking above and beyond the job as well, with stuff like making sure that the wellness and all that they're taking that in consideration, and that they're disconnecting from work and all that sort of stuff. So you have to sort of incorporate those things into your day-to-day stuff. So to be honest with you, leads to a really, really fantastic workplace.
Yeah, excellent. So, Adam, listen, thanks very much for that. Really interesting. What we're going to do is we're going to move along to Keith, who's been quietly listening to everything there. Thanks very much for your patience, Keith. So as I mentioned, Keith is based out of Malta, and he's a member of IT at Cork. And I think you can pick up from the name of the company that Keith is very much works with the SME sector in cybersecurity. And I know that there's a lot of content out there at the moment about cybersecurity. You know, and we had some very high profile events last year, but I still think in the context of hybrid, I felt it was worth maybe just coming back and talking a little bit about it. So Keith, just maybe before we get into the specifics, like if you want to just give a little bit of background about yourself and Cybergate, so we can just get an understanding of where you're coming from.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kevin, and thanks Adam as well for your input. Yeah, so our company specializes in cybersecurity matters. So we offer full services where anything cybersecurity is needed. That is training, that is penetration testing, consultancy. So we work with IT teams where we would suggest what patchwork, what fixes are needed within the company, for example, and then with that report, the company would go and implement those changes. And then in certain instances also then we would retest just to make sure. We work hand in hand with IT because we do not do IT. We do not do what the IT teams do, and the IT teams do not do what we do. We like to use the example of the chef patron, who's the owner and the chef of a restaurant, and usually it's someone else who's checking his stuff. If you tell him, is your food good, he's going to always tell you, yes, my food is excellent. But then there has to be someone else to balance that out and check that out and obviously guide accordingly. So in all our operations, we work hand in hand with internal teams of internal IT teams of certain companies, and also third party, because many SMEs do not have their own IT in-house team. They have an external one. So they were engaged to work hand in hand with those. Yeah, and I understand. I see, like you already do some work with the SME sector, and the chamber, I think already. So you're very familiar with the SME. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So if we just get into it there, then Keith, just from the point of view, if we just, before we look at the specifics of hybrid, like what's your understanding of kind of an overview of the key threats at the moment for the SME sector? The main ones. So there are a number of threats, but the main ones which are being used at the moment, the methods are malware and ransomware. So with malware, the method would be used, for example, if attacking a bank. So they would reside on the inside of the company, or if it's a financial institution, for example, where there is some big money to be made, and they will actually reside without anyone noticing. The recent monster which emerged lately is ransomware. So there are ransomware groups which work together in the dark web. And what happens is that once they're in, they actually encrypt all the files of the company, of that machine, of the laptop they first engage with, and then they work laterally to infect all the machines up to the server, hoping that the company does not have backups. If they have backups, then phase 2 of the attack happens, which is a double extortion, which is where the hacker will engage with the victim and say, okay, we noticed you did not engage back with us for our first request, but we still want the money, because otherwise we're going to leak your data on the dark web. And for some companies, this is not affordable, Kevin. Some companies which are dealing with high profile clients, high profile data, cannot afford that. Last week, Samsung, Nvidia. So these are companies where they cannot afford to have, for example, their code leaked.
Yeah.
But it's happening whilst we speak.
Yeah.
A very important supplier of Toyota 2 weeks ago. So it becomes really sticky.
Mm-hmm. And just in relation, Keith, just in relation to kind of that overview and those two typical types of attacks, yes. Ransomware and malware, like for the SME owners now, are there specific activities that we can undertake? Like, are there activities that we can undertake now to protect ourselves against these type of threats, particularly in a hybrid environment?
Yes, the focus today would be on awareness, Kevin. Right. So what fueled all these attacks was actually the hybrid work environment. Right. So although it was already serious, in 2019, pre-COVID, it was already getting serious, and we were noticing that the trends were changing. They were becoming more aggressive. To their luck, any cyber criminal found themselves playing with this amazing and this pool of victims, which was really just go and grab. We like to compare it to a herd of water buffaloes being attacked by a lion or a number of lions. That would be very difficult. Mm-hmm. But that would be pre-COVID. What's happening now is the water buffalo is isolated, so he's much more vulnerable. Right. And okay. This is what happened. So although we had to go hybrid, as all of us know, and it's the topic of today, this brought with it challenges and difficulties for the company, for the SME owners, and for the individuals, because now they're stranded. Where before if you would go through an awareness training, and then you'd recognize there might be a problem with an email. It could be a phishing email you just received. You would get up, speak to your manager, or go to the IT guy across the corridor. Yes. Now people are stranded. So this presented a very big challenge. They would call, maybe they have to call or email the IT manager now. But what happens if they've called him 2 or 3 times already? And the 4th time they say, yeah, most probably, I'm just crying wolf. So this looks legit. Let me go for it. And that's when they actually fall for the attack. And the attacks are happening on the individuals. This week we learned that Conti Group, which is one of the most famous ones on the dark web, last year alone they made $180 million in ransom. They are actually recruiting people from the inside. So employees on the inside of the SMEs now will be reached via an email or a Telegram message, because they know who they're after, and they're actually trying to engage them. Right. Or X amount in euros in cryptocurrency. They will ask for the information, so login and details, etc. Yeah. Okay. And just if we just bring it back a little bit there, Keith, you know, you mentioned, and it's interesting that you just picked one item. You just picked awareness as the item to discuss today, right? Yes. Are there specific, like with employees, you know, working in a hybrid environment, they do spend more time on their own, or they're a certain bit isolated. Like, are there specific activities or specific approach that the SME owners can take to this awareness, to keeping it live and keeping it effective? Yes, Kevin, it's important. Awareness can't be taken lightly. So now it's everyone's responsibility. There is a bit of a disparity between management and then employees, because we, as management, we're creating this training module. We're engaging with the company to provide cybersecurity awareness. There's a platform. We'll speak about that very soon, so that there isn't a logistical issue. But it's everyone. So when we speak to SMEs, Kevin, we strongly suggest that everyone is enrolled, from the CEO, because there's a whaling type of attack, which is a form of cyber attack, and there is also an attack on the receptionist on the very front end. There are ways. Once they lock in onto a company, they will have a team, and the team will work on different groups of the company or different individuals. So no one is safe. This is why when we say awareness now, it's not management providing training for our staff. It's us management training with our staff and being trained in cybersecurity awareness.
Yeah, very good, very good.
There are the platforms exist. So this is where the technology comes in. So we have developed a platform where people do not need to be locked in a room at the same time. The challenge with SMEs, Kevin, as all of us here know, is that sometimes we cannot afford to have our contingent, 20 people, 30 people of our staff locked in a room at the same time, being exposed to training.
Yeah.
So what we did is we converted that into a platform. So management would take that on board and then give that out to the employees, where they have a certain number of weeks or months to take the training.
Yes. So yeah, very good. And you find that gives people the flexibility. So I think that like tools like that would deliver the right training in a flexible manner, I think would be very, very important. Like what's really interesting, just from a timing point of view, and quite early this morning was the first time I managed to look at the local news for the national news broadcaster here in Ireland, and they published a survey this morning that was developed by the .ie organization in Ireland, and it was a cybersecurity survey related to the SME sector, and some of the statistics were frightening. So like 4% of SMEs train their staff in cyber awareness, and I just, because I knew the content that we were going to be talking about today, and I just thought it was a really relevant piece of information, like that. You know, we can get caught up in technology, and the technology when it comes to cybersecurity is critical, you know, and I think that, you know, we do need to have this end-to-end view of our technology to understand how we can protect ourselves. I know that I've talked to a lot of business owners who have been, you know, have been attacked, and they have been badly damaged. And the one thing they say is that they wish they had understood things better. They wish they had whiteboarded things better. They wish they had broken down everything into a language and in a way that they can really understand the risks of their business. So I think that while technology is important, I think that statistic, I think, is huge.
Yeah.
A couple of other
they cannot be blamed, Kevin. They cannot be blamed because they are used to the norm of 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And we like to mention every time we have a training session, the norm is not the norm anymore. People cannot rely. If they've been in business for the last 10, 15, 20 years, what's happening now is relatively new. They cannot bank on the relative security they had operating in the last 15, 20 years. The number of attacks, which are growing exponentially, we form part of large forums, and we have also access to forums on the dark web. So we hear what's happening on industry is very scary. That 4% that you mentioned, Kevin, that should be 100. Not 99, not 98, 100. And this is why everyone, when we do training, they bring everyone from the CEO. Some people have their own building and their own car parks. So they even bring the car park assistant into the training. Just to expose them to what they could be, they could fall victim to. Everyone needs to be aware of how to recognize a potential attack. Because there is also a mentality, Kevin, here it's important to highlight that it's not my issue, it's the company's issue. No? So it's not me, I'm just an employee. Yes, but you could be that one employee out of 150 who creates a backdoor opening for the attackers without knowing. Today, even knowing, because today they could even be part of. They could be assisting. It could be a rogue employee who's on the way out, for example. And they engage with the criminals to actually allow the criminals into the company. We've never had this. Ransomware gangs actually are now renting their tools because it's all done using tools, just like any mechanic would use special tools to work on a car engine. These people have tools. If you don't have the right tools, never mind. You go onto the forums. There's a chat. There is actually there's a customer care operator, and they will lead you. Most of them are unfortunately Russian speaking because the expertise has really exploded there, and they actually lend you their tools. So this has become really dangerous. So why are SMEs of any size and even major corporations now in danger? because even a junior hacker who's very young, not that much experience, can now engage and use more powerful tools to still create a powerful attack. It's really, really, really dangerous. It's not, we cannot feel it's okay like it was 5 years ago. From COVID onwards, it will never be the same, Kevin.
No, I understand totally. So I think obviously, Keith, like the strong message we're picking up from you today is just in relation to awareness, and training. You know, is like we are the weakest link in a lot of these cyber attacks. Just looking from I suppose from my own point of view and some of the stuff that we would look at with our SME customers, as I mentioned, you know, the concept of an end-to-end review of the technology that you do use to run your business from a cybersecurity point of view, I think is very, very important. And again, there are a lot of advantages in cloud computing in terms of security. One of the things that was remarkable for us when COVID did hit and people did move home is the amount of devices that people were buying. Like there was a global shortage of laptops and the price of laptops did skyrocket, but it was a very good approach that people had, in that if they wanted people to work in a hybrid or in a remote environment, that they wanted to give them devices that they would use. And we would certainly really recommend that, because you know, if you're working remotely or from different locations, I think it's important that you give your staff a device and you try and encourage them not to share that device with other members of the family.
What happened?
In
fact, Kevin, is a very, very, very valid point. The problem that happened when people were rushed home to work remotely, the companies had never thought of this. So they would have given, for example, laptops, specialized company laptops to, not specialized, but dedicated laptops to management, but then not, for example, an accounts clerk.
Yes.
So because obviously I mean, you cannot have 20 laptops all of a sudden just to dish out to, if you have a contingency of 20 staff. So what happened, and they know that the people who did not have a dedicated laptop were sharing the laptop with their kids.
Yes.
Who would have downloaded constantly apps which are not safe. So the device, the machine, is not safe. And it's not possible, it will not be possible. So on moving forward towards a continued hybrid arrangement, companies will still not have a dedicated laptop. They will not have for all their staff.
Yes.
It's understandable, but unfortunately, this is the risk. Why are we stressing on awareness? Because it's a very low entry level, even investment wise, Kevin. When you invest in awareness training and people you can train all your staff for a very, very minimal investment, at least you're showing them what they should do not to become the next victim.
Yes.
So we cover the full modules of any possible attack, and we're constantly updating that. So there are no surprises. If yesterday there was a new method,
I think
if there was a new method that's being used by cyber criminals, then we need to share it with all those out there.
Were you going to say something, Adam?
There's an Irish company, and they're a client of ours as well, called ThinScale. And what they do, interesting enough, that they allow companies to use home employees' laptops where they can actually security divide it out and stuff. If they normally make sales, I think, a lot of BPO companies, and they certainly did really well during COVID, where people didn't have laptops at home and there was a shortage of laptops, where they could actually basically divide up the laptops. I don't know enough about the technology, but you should really have a look at ThinScale, because they're a good Irish company around this area.
Very good, very good. So just to review again, I suppose Keith's focus is on awareness, and we've also touched on some other issues regarding, I suppose, the practical issues of working in a hybrid work environment in terms of your end-to-end analysis, maybe looking at cloud computing, keeping devices separate if you can afford to do that. And if you must share devices, I think it's really critical that you do set up individual profiles, so that if there is one PC that, you know, the parents are using for working and the kids are using for surfing the net, that you have a separate login on that device.
And Kevin, I would also, like Keith, I would say awareness is number one.
No, this is absolutely
all of our crew basically go to at least 3 or 4 sessions a year on cyber, ransomware, malware, whatever, you know, and like that, you know,
and it's really extensive, Adam.
Yeah,
guys, you're all familiar with this kind of cable, but maybe some of you or many of you do not know that this can be weaponized. It can be packaged in an Apple packaging. I can drop it in a car park of a company or a few lifts which lead up to a certain business offices, for example, if I'm planning a directed attack. But this is not an armed one, but like this, there are cables which once you plug them in, then I have remote access to your device, be it your laptop, be it your phone. So just this is why we're saying the norm is not the norm. This didn't exist before, and this you'd have a, you know, it would look like a normal charging cable. This is called an OMG cable. But with this, within a mile, I take remote access without you noticing that you're plugged in. Why am I saying this? Because people will not know. If they have not been exposed to the awareness of this possibility, they will be the first ones to go for it. Why do we share do not plug any USBs? A method used by when there's a targeted attack, so they're after a certain company, is they would have pens which look like this one, okay, brand new, sealed. It will be a USB pen. They drop a few of these in the car park or on the lifts. It will be branded. It could be, for example, saying Netflix free access, or I don't know, Dropbox or whatever. We could create anything we want. Once this is plugged in, and people do not know, sometimes they bring their hard drive from home because they were working on a project, and they plug it in to the office stations. It's a big no-no. This is why, again, awareness. This, if I'm at an airport station, I can't plug this into the airport pillar to charge my phone. Not anymore, because the pillar can be weaponized again to take over my device. So not many people know this. And this is why awareness, so that everyone say, I didn't know that.
And all those
I pasted in, just to give an idea, for those interested, what it would look like. So what the platform would look like, Kevin. In the comments box.
Okay, very good. And I think, like, your point there is that all these items, you know, if you have a proper awareness program and you discuss everything with your staff, all these, you know, technologies and the what can be weaponized, I think it can be explained to staff. So that was really, really interesting, Keith. Thanks very much for that. I'm just conscious. I'm just watching time as well. We're on a bit of an agenda, and I think that you know, what we might do now is we might just look at some of the questions that have come up in the chat there. So like I just see one in there from Donna there. So he's just asked a question there. You know, that, you know, we can all mention, or we're all aware of, some very high-profile cyber attacks. But I suppose the question is, you know, is this a real worry for SMEs? You know, the type of cyber attack where you lose money, or where your data is lost. And like I will hand this over to Keith just for a comment. But before I do, I give you my 2 pence worth. I see it regularly. I see SME owners who've lost a lot of money, and I see SME owners whose data is encrypted and their business is in the can. And what I say to them is this: I say, you know, of those 2 attacks, losing some money is probably better than losing your data, because if you lose some money, it's a portion of your funds. If you lose your data, it's your entire business. So do you want to pass a comment on that one, Keith?
Yes, thanks, Kevin. So this is usually aligned with a question we receive very frequently. Which companies are interested in undergoing cybersecurity awareness training? Well, every company under the sun, because if you're hit, then it's your business. In Malta, there was a campaign by the Malta police force, the cyber unit, And they actually interviewed a guy, obviously his face was covered. He was in the third generation of business. Audit firm, the grandfather started it. You can imagine the number of clients. The dad continued, and it was now given to the son. He was young, 32, 34, and his business was taken away completely. He didn't have the right backups, and he suffered a cyber attack in 2019, finished. Because what happens is, it's like you're trying to come home, opening your house with your key, which is now not opening your house. So you cannot get in.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the ugliest, scariest thing. And what people will see in an attack, this is something we share even in our training. We actually show images that we obtained from the dark web of what it looks like. When you open your folder, all the tabs, the tiles where before you had your files are now encrypted. Each tile, once you try and click on it, will contain numbers, letters, and figures, and then there'll be an English, what you recognize in English, which is the ransom note. Every file will have it, and it will say, "I'm sorry, but we have hacked you. What you need to do now," it's like instructions. Send money to this e-wallet. It's in Bitcoin, by the way, so they won't be asking you to send your money to a bank. And what happens after that? Something we discussed in our previous chats is, do SMEs pay the ransom? Unfortunately, when they have no other option and there's no backup and they have data to protect, yes, which is fueling the constant growing attacks. So governments are trying to block this, but it's not possible because people do not want to lose their business. Those who have run their business for 20, 25, 30 years, all of a sudden in half a day can see all those years taken away.
Yeah.
And then there's also technology. So some people have their backup on the same server, which is inside the office, Kevin.
Yes.
So once they're hacked, their backups are also hacked. Yeah. Again, awareness to the IT teams, what you should do, how you dissect this and have your backups separate. This is all part of the awareness program.
Yeah.
It's a 2-hour program. It's very, very, very brief. And especially with the platform, doesn't have to be taken at once. And there is a quiz after every module to make sure everyone understood fully. Because some training platforms, you just play and then you go and grab a coffee. We made sure that this doesn't happen because with the cyber attacks, it's not possible.
Very good. I see, and there's just a query in from Paula from the Chamber there. She just mentions that they did some cyber training recently, and it really wasn't until the training and the awareness was finished that their staff, I suppose, realized, the potential, the potential for an attack or how exposed they were before the training. And the question really is, could governments be doing more to highlight, the importance of awareness? Or like in Malta, for example, would it be any different than Ireland? Like
they are. So it's the EU. The EU is now realizing, Kevin, it's a very good question.
Yeah.
The EU is realizing that the EU is in trouble because of the attacks. So they have upped their push for awareness. For example, clients in Malta who are in the financial sector or banks or insurance companies, they are forced now to go through cybersecurity training. So this is why even our business has grown. Unfortunately for the industry, fortunately for us, but unfortunately for the industry. But people are learning more how to protect their business, and everyone is made. One thing because we also do in-person training, our engineers do in-person training. One thing we start with within the first 5 minutes is one of you could be the person who's going to let the hackers in. So we invite you to let go of your phones. People sometimes are scrolling even during training to see what's happening on Twitter or Facebook, for example. And we make sure we gain their full attention, because it is the truth. They will go after an individual. If it's a spear phishing attack, Kevin, then they have already their ducks in a row, and they're going to shoot them one by one.
Okay, very good, very good. There's just another question there. This one might be for you there, Adam. There's just a query just on kind of how SME owners or business owners should manage the virtual meeting, right? So the question is asked, Do you encourage the video interaction, or do you are you happy just to let people, complete the meeting without the video interaction? So like, is there benefits there in that, Adam, or what would your opinion on that one be?
Yeah, you're talking about if people have their video on or off, is it?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It looks like that's what the query is. So like,
I would, again, I think it's up to the company to create this policy. We have a policy that, you have to have your video on in the story, and there's an element, if you go down the security route as well, there's an element of you shouldn't have a background, Kevin, because people could be stealing your data from behind your back and you don't even know type thing. Do you know what I mean? You can go as crazy on these things as possible. Like for instance, people are saying at interviews, you don't allow people to have the background thing on in interviews because it could be somebody feeding them questions.
Yes.
You know what? Like, I go back to my original comment. Exactly what Keith is saying is very important. Awareness is massively important. We've been targeted once or twice with phishing stuff and whatever. And I could tell you a story of where one of our employees basically ended up handing over 400 quid to somebody who were buying Apple tokens, for instance, right? In the early stages when she was in the company. But you have to be very aware of these things. Having the video on, to go back to the question, sorry, I rambled off there a minute. In our situation, I would insist on, we as a company insist on having the video on for sure. Now, there's always an argument for why they should be on or they shouldn't be on, but work that out as a company yourselves. Slavery is over. People can move around companies and work for ones that are good fun as well,
Yeah, very good. Another one for you actually, Adam, here. This is from Gillian. She just wants to know, what is the single biggest challenge SMEs are bringing to HR Locker to resolve? So, in your meetings representing HR Locker, meeting the SME sector across Ireland, what are
automating the mundane crap that you have to do, like everything from requesting holidays to probably most of the SMEs that come to us, they come out with a business problem. Their first business problem is normally, I want to manage holidays and employee data safely, right? That's one of the first ones. And then it goes on to training, it goes on to performance management, it goes on to the recruitment side with our applicant tracking system. So it's a difficult one to answer, Gillian. But if you put a gun to my head and said, what's the one business problem that they come to us, is being able to manage people remotely and be able to manage holidays and data. That's the first step on the I think it's called the hierarchical needs, the Maslow's hierarchical needs. That seems to be the first one for companies, basically.
Very good. Okay, guys, I think we're coming to the end. I think that's a lot of the questions we've gone through, the main questions in the chat there. And from a time point of view, I don't want to run over because I know it's a short week. So just to say, thanks very much to Adam, and thanks to Keith for your time. Like, really, really appreciate it. And it was very, very insightful. I'd also like to thank all the members of both the Chamber and IT at Cork for joining us this morning. I hope you all got something out of it. I'd like to thank IT at Cork Skillnet and Cork Chamber Skillnet for the sponsorship of the event. Really, really appreciate it. And we all know how difficult it is to get sponsors. So I'm delighted that they had an interest in this series. We'd also ask you just to keep an eye on the websites, the Cork Chamber website and the IT at Cork website for any up and coming events. And we hope to see you back here in May for the second installment in the series of the IT for SMEs. So with that, I would say thank you very much and have a nice weekend.